The Seattle Mariners last made a playoff appearance in 2001. And after that, there were several times where the Mariners kept being competitive, but just falling oh so close to making the playoffs, either by a game or two over the past few years. And 2021 was hoping to be different as the Mariners saw themselves having to leapfrog several teams to make a run for the wild card. And it came down to the final day. And of course, it looked like things could have been going their way, the momentum to stay alive from the night before to get into the playoffs, but they needed a lot of help. They needed a win plus a Yankees or Red Sox loss. And unfortunately, the Red Sox and Yankees both pulled it out, which made it a little tough for the Mariners. But here to talk about the season that the Mariners had, longtime Mariners fan, someone I know, of course, someone who's been on the show about 3 or 4 times, my brother, Edward Holland. Eddie, how you doing? And what's it feeling like after seeing this season? Especially, it came down to a crazy last week.
Hello. I'm doing well. I wasn't expecting Seattle to be so good this year. Pitching, still questionable. I know that a lot of MLB experts said that the bullpen was like phenomenal, but starting pitching, it was kind of, off and on. Chris Flexen, who I never heard of, he pitched a good season this year. I think he went 13-7 this year with a low 3 ERA. Marco Gonzalez, I think this last time he pitched was his first loss of his last couple outings. He went 10-6 after a horrible first half after being injured. And just the energy the team brought this year. I mean, beginning of the year, you didn't see the energy, but towards All-Star break and beyond, it seemed like the energy of the team was different. A lot of people counted them out. Even myself, I kind of counted them out too. But then as I continued to see them win series against even teams that had a good winning record and teams that had a bad winning record, that was the most important thing, is that they won the games they're supposed to win. They lost the games they're supposed to lose, but also won the games they weren't supposed to win either.
And we'll talk a little more about the season and your expectations coming in. But to you, how did you become a Mariners fan?
Ken Griffey Jr., Jay Buhner, Joey Cora, Alex Rodriguez, young Alex Rodriguez, who was playing with Seattle. Oh, man, who else? Mike Blowers, Tino, when Tino was there. It was a 1995 squad that really made me become a Seattle Mariners fan. At that time, I wasn't really a baseball fan, but when I saw Ken Griffey Jr., I was like, hey, cool, that's my team. I adopted Griffey, and I adopted the Seattle Mariners ever since then. 26 years. 26 years I've been a Seattle Mariners fan.
That's almost more than half, actually very close to half of their lifetime. This was the 45th Mariners season. But yeah, and that's saying a lot, especially the dedication, because I remember our first Mariners game was in 1995. So that's, very, very long time ago. What was your most memorable Mariners moment? I know there's had to be a lot of them. Was it something in 95? Was it 01, that record-breaking season? To you, what in particular stood out to you?
1995. Edgar Martinez up the bat. ALDS against the Yankees, Game 5. Hits a double. Griffey scores all the way. Boom, take him to ALCS. One of the most memorable games I remember in my life. And so that's when I like, you know what? Seattle, Griffey, all the players above, everything. That's when I kind of jumped on the bandwagon. Ever since, I've been on the team's bandwagon. Haven't jumped off, haven't traded alliances. I didn't go to the Reds. I didn't go to the White Sox. I didn't go to whatever other team Griffey went to. I stayed with Seattle through the ups and downs. It's a lot more downs than ups.
I mean, and even then, like I said, they've had some memorable moments. Being an Orioles fan, I would see all the Mariners games. So, guys like Bobby Ayala, Dan Wilson, Norm Charlton, Chris Bosio, Raul Ibanez, his 3 times that he came back.
We're going back technical baseball time now.
Yeah, Raul Ibanez, Rich Amaral, Carlos Guillen, Freddie Garcia, John Halama, all those guys that came over in that Randy Johnson trade. And it's just crazy. Just and again, all those years of watching those Orioles Mariners games, especially staying up, we'll watch them on the West Coast. You watch all the things in that run of a 01 season. They were pretty much of a big deal there. But going into the season, what were your expectations for the Mariners? I know last year they struggled, especially with the shortened season. They were able to pull out Rookie of the Year with Kyle Lewis. But to you, what were you thinking that the Mariners could do heading into the season? I know from all the conversations that we had, you were uncertain about really what Jerry DePota was doing with the rebuild, especially after that turnaround where they had traded Diaz, they had traded Cano just to get him off and off the books, and thankfully that sort of worked out. But to you, what were those expectations coming into a full season in 2021?
The expectation was pretty much that they weren't going to win no more than 70 games. I wasn't even expecting them to be where they were today, but I also kept track of the young players coming up. I was saying to myself, with Julio Rodriguez coming, with Jared Kelenic, who finally came up. Pretty much they drafted a whole bunch of outfielders, young outfielders, and I was thinking to myself, was like, where are we going to put them at? I mean, we got Mitch Haniger, who could be considered an old man of the team. I'm just like, wow, where are we going to put all these outfielders at? And then we talk about some decent pitching. I mean, Logan Gilbert, I was following him. I was following Seattle when they were drafting. Twitter to this day is still one of the best social media platforms when it comes to sports because they keep stuff up to date instead of going somewhere else to look at it and everything else.
Was there a point during the season that you were confident the Mariners were going to make the playoffs? Was it that run in the stretch of September where they started catching fire, where they leapfrogged the A's? They were going neck and neck with the Blue Jays, Yankees, and Red Sox. And I know a couple times they were sharing the lead at point for the wild card.
It's about a third of the season when I was like, okay, Seattle's wild card position. I said, wow, they're over the Yankees. They're over these good teams, the Red Sox. They're over the Blue Jays. They're over a couple other teams. Okay, Seattle. I said, if Seattle kept that steam up, I think they would have probably won wild card spots and stuff. But I kind of figured after that series with the Blue Jays in late August, I said, okay, we're going to make a playoff push. And we did make that push until the last 3 games of the season.
I was going to say, was that the point when you were thinking that playoffs were in doubt? Was it that Friday night game where Gonzalez pitched an extremely great game, allowing only 2 runs, but there was a situation, looking at that game, they had the runners at the corners with no outs and couldn't get anybody in, and that proved to be one of the big blows because if they win that game, then, you're not as much concerned about the Sunday game, but you could easily say maybe they should have started Tyler Anderson that game and then had Marco go on Sunday. But, again, it's still, it's one of those things where you can always Monday morning quarterback.
Well, I think the Friday game was the one that done us in. If we had won the Friday game, won the Saturday game, Sunday game, like you said, wouldn't have mattered because that would have put us at 91-71. And I believe that we would we wouldn't have made it still because Boston and New York were 92-70. So we still would have been out by 1 game. A lot of factors played it. We needed help from the Nationals. We needed help from the Orioles. We got help from the Rays. Tampa Bay did what they're supposed to do. But,
you got help from the Orioles earlier in the week. You just couldn't get it the last part of the week.
Yeah. If you depend on the Nationals or Orioles last couple of series, especially against teams who got above 500 games, I had no answer for it.
It's a common theme, and Thran, I don't know if he's watching, but he'll hear this. But when you have to rely on the Nationals bullpen for anything, because the Nats were up 5-2 in that game. If you have to rely on the Nationals bullpen, then you're in trouble because they've never had a good bullpen. Even winning a World Series, they've never had a good bullpen. But who did you think the Mariners would have matched up the best with if they made the playoffs?
We had this conversation. I said if Seattle made it in, Tampa Bay would have been a better matchup for us. Like I was saying, we owned them this year. We owned Tampa Bay. We swept them too in Tampa Bay, 4-game sweep.
Who was the team that you would have been concerned about seeing in the playoffs? Because I know, again, playing the Astros, the Mariners were 47 and 20, maybe 27 or 28 against the NL West. So it's not like they were struggling and just beat up on everybody else. They took care of business in their own division. Who worried you? Was it the White Sox? Was it the Red Sox or someone like that?
No, Yankees. The series against the Yankees, we should have swept them. Okay, except for that first game against the Yankees. But the last 2 games, we should have swept them. Bullpen gave them up. And Stanton, that's good Lord. He's like a young Vladimir Guerrero. The ball can be in dirt and he'll still hit a home run.
Not even like, Vlad Jr. is more like a young Vlad Guerrero. I don't know.
No. I'm talking about young Vlad. young Vlad. Young Vlad the third.
So one of those questions, especially looking at it, came down to 2 games. If you could look back at 2 games that you thought the Mariners should have won, that would have propelled you at least to a tie with the Red Sox and the Yankees. What are two games that you look back on and think we had them and we let it slip away?
The series against Kansas City is the series against Kansas City. That's what done us in. That series against Kansas City going into toward the beginning of September. That series against Kansas City, I go back to that. Salvador Perez killed us. He killed us, man. And I was like, man, we're losing to Kansas City Royals. We should have swept them, then going into the beginning of September, then boom, we would have been good. The last couple of weeks of August, going to September, it was like Oakland, Astros, Angels, and they had Kansas City in there somewhere. And once again, Oakland, the Angels finished season off. We swept Oakland.
Yeah, I believe twice or?
Yes, yeah, it was something twice, yeah. I mean, like I say, it was very surprising to see how good Seattle was this year. How they won series, how they won 4-game series. They may have won 3 games, or like 3-game series. They may have won 2 games and stuff. But the thing is, though, is that they were winning series. I was looking at it, it's like, okay, cool, boom, 2 wins in the series, cool, boom. We swept the Rays, boom. I said, okay, cool, we're winning the games we're supposed to win. And then once again, of course, we play teams that like to spoil other teams' playoff hopes, i.e. the Angels.
Yeah, and I think about this. I mean, and it's funny. Everybody will say, yeah, you can think of the last 3-game set of the season where, oh, those are 2 big losses. But here and there, people don't think about one loss here in April or one loss here in May can be the difference. The Orioles beat the Mariners on a walk-off. That could have been a completely different game. Yeah, that's one game there. I mean, even the John Means no-hitter notwithstanding, there's probably plenty of other games that you could say, even like in July or all, like you said, you mentioned the Kansas City.
Detroit. You got no hit by Detroit. I was thinking to myself, that's what I thought then. I was like, okay, we get no hit by the Orioles, we get no hit by Detroit. I said, we're not going to the playoffs. But then come find out after those, man, it's just like, hey, they struggled, made it through, pushed towards the end of the season. I mean, they did a good push toward the end of the season. And a lot of people, including myself, MLB experts as well, they said Seattle is a year ahead on schedule to be one of the best teams in the major leagues.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, the success the Mariners had, you look at Justin Sheffield, who struggled. He had a 6.8 ERA. You look at the team batting average was 229. For them to be able to have that success with a lot of guys hitting under 220, even Kyle Seager having a dynamic season with 35 homers, 100 RBI, but hitting 212. Yeah. I mean, for them to be able to do that and have that success, that is saying a lot about, again, the pitching and the bullpen. I know Scott Servais, what was your opinion on Scott Servais as well? I know former catcher, played in the majors, and I know you mentioned you were sort of uncertain about Jerry DiPoto for a while. I remember a particular post you talking about you did not understand what he was doing, but it seemed like he turned it around, and ownership believes so because he was promoted to president of baseball operations.
They gave him more power. Does it happen to Emperor? Get the Emperor more power, he starts making more and more dumb decisions. So,
Jack Z isn't in charge anymore. Jack Z is not in charge anymore.
But it's Scott Servais. I believe he's a good manager. Like I'm saying, you can only work with what you got, and the pieces we had, that's from Jerry DiPoto. But then again, like I'm saying, when he traded Kendall Graveman away for Abraham Toro, I was like, man, you just gave away one of our best bullpen people away. Couldn't find out on the back end. Toro came through clutch. Toro won us a couple games. In fact, Toro hit a grand slam off a Kendall Graveman in one game in Seattle to give us a walk-off grand slam home run.
Yeah, everybody will say, well, what is this move that you're making? And you end up finding out, hey, it turns out well. And if Toro blossoms to a guy that maybe hits 20-some-odd homers, drives in 70 RBIs with a 240, 250 average, which sadly we're all saying 240, 250 nowadays, that's apparently tends to be high praise when that could be just sort of average back in the old days. But that might benefit down the road. And like I said, I looked at Chris Flexen's stats prior to this, didn't play in the majors prior to 2019 and was released by the Mets. And you look at it, and it's like this guy came out of nowhere. What did he do? 3-6 in 17, 0-2 in 18, 0-3 in 19 with the Mets, and then all of a sudden 14-6. I think this reminds me a lot of the 1989 Orioles. The 1989 Orioles followed up a season where they lost 100 some odd games, ended up coming within basically the final day or the next to last day of the season with a chance to win the division. And then all of a sudden the next year, the carrots turn into a pumpkin in 90. So you never know.
Speaking of the Orioles, man, I'm not an O's fan, I'm a Shorebirds fan, but I think they are a year or so away from actually competing in the AL East. The only thing I see wrong with Baltimore is pitching. They don't have any pitching. I mean, you got your fielders, you got your catcher, you got your infielders, outfielders, you got all that. You got all that stuff. You just don't have the pitching, except for what John Means. That's it. And then they got pitching coming up too.
Yeah, Grayson Rodriguez. I mean, they got a bunch of guys, but who knows? Like I said, they were good. They tried to play spoiler with the Red Sox. It was a bunch of young guys who were down in the minor leagues a couple of years ago. That's something, I always say this as we sort of go off on the tangent here. They're officially in year one of a 3-year rebuild. This is year 3 of a rebuild. It's supposed to take 5 years, but this is the first full year. 19, everybody got hired late. Nobody got hired until November. When everybody was getting their stuff, they couldn't get all the people in. Last year, no minor league season, so you couldn't really see people progress. This year, you see everybody progress, and then all of a sudden, who knows what's going to happen in 21 if there isn't a strike, and then everybody gets pissed off and nobody wants to watch baseball anymore.
I think people will watch baseball again.
Not if they strike over money. No. And now people don't want to hear about rich people's problems if they're struggling to pay their own bills.
Yeah, well, I do think the minor league needs to get paid more than what they're getting paid, though. Like saying, they're still putting their body on the line. They're still missing time with family. They're still spending time in the hotel rooms and still spending time rooming with families and everything else and stuff. I mean, it's just ridiculous how low minor league players get paid, unless you're a big name like a Bryce Harper or a Manny Machado or a Juan Soto or somebody like that. Unless you're a big name like that, man, of course you make the millions, but these guys are fighting to eat and fighting for a spot on the major league roster.
Yeah, they complain. Poor American kids complain about trying to think. Look at the Dominican kids who have to be in the minors for 7 years before they make it to the majors. The Dominican kids have a tougher road than some of the American ones. But yeah, as we get back on the topic, going to the World Series, who do you have coming out of the American League? Who do you have coming out of the National League? And who wins the World Series? And in how many games?
American League, I got Tampa Bay Rays. National League, I got the San Francisco Giants. I had the San Francisco Giants winning the World Series in 7 games. I just feel confident in San Francisco. I think San Francisco got it all together with the addition of Chris Bryant on there. I just think they're one of the hottest teams in baseball today, man. And like I'm saying, it's this thing. I always look back. I just looked at this video on YouTube. It showed the last outs in the last couple of World Series. And out those World Series, I think it's dated back to 2004-ish, I think. And it showed, without the World Series until now, the Giants were involved in several of them. Giants and Red Sox were involved in several of them. And I was like, okay. I was always a firm believer. It's like every couple of seasons, the Giants always produce a good team when they make the playoff and win the World Series.
Yeah, it's just like the Marlins will show up every now and then.
Yeah.
But if the Marlins get to the playoffs, beware because they're going to the World Series. Yeah, that or the Dodgers are always on the losing end of a lot of those too. So
when it showed the World Series, it showed the Marlins and Yankees. Like I said, that was a year that I was like, oh wow, it's like no one expected the Marlins to beat the Yankees. It was crazy. I was just like, that was like one of the craziest seasons ever.
Yeah, especially just look at those 2 LCSs. But as we start to wrap this up, we can talk forever, but as we start to wrap this up, do you have any shout outs you want to give, anything you want to promote, and how can people reach out to you on social media when it's actually working to talk Mariners baseball?
Well, when the social media is actually working, I prefer Twitter. My Twitter handle is at eholla86. Same thing, my IG, eholla86, Facebook. Edward Holland Sr. I got a YouTube channel where I do my hot sauces and stuff on there too. I mean, you can hit me up on there. It's eholla or Ed Hot. You can look up eholla86 as well on my YouTube and stuff. So,